They told your grandmother it was superstition, a weed poultice for a sting, bark tea for a fever, mold scraped from a cellar wall pressed into an open wound. For most of the 20th century, American medicine treated this knowledge as something to be embarrassed by, a relic of a less enlightened age. Doctors who used it were called quacks. Mothers who trusted it were called backward. Here's what nobody bothered to tell you. In the last 30 years, hospitals across this country have quietly reintroduced at least 10 of these exact remedies, sometimes under new Latin names, sometimes patented by the same pharmaceutical companies that once mocked them. The plants did not change. The science finally caught up. This is not folklore. This is documented frontier medicine, verified by modern clinical trials, FDA clearances, and peer-reviewed journals. We are counting down 10 of them, and by the end you will understand why your great-grandmother's medicine cabinet deserves a second look. Number 10. Willow bark for pain and fever. Frontier mothers from Ohio to the Carolinas kept a strip of willow bark on hand the way we keep aspirin today, and for good reason. They steeped the inner bark into a bitter tea and gave it for headaches, joint pain, and the deep ache of a working fever. They did not know why it worked. They only knew that it did, generation after generation, long before anyone in a laboratory understood the mechanism. In 1828, German researchers isolated the active compound, salicin, directly from willow bark. By 1899, a German chemical company had refined it into acetylsalicylic acid, put it on the market under a new name, aspirin. The frontier remedy did not get replaced by modern medicine. It became modern medicine's best-selling product, repackaged and stripped of the bark that birthed it. Your great-grandmother was taking the original formula. You have likely taken the synthetic copy this year. Number 9. Raw honey packed directly into an open wound. This sounds like exactly the kind of thing that should have killed people. Instead, it saved limbs. Frontier women packed honey into deep cuts, burns, and infected sores because they had watched it work. The wound staying clean, the swelling dropping, the healing moving faster than anything else available to them. Civil War field hospitals used it when proper dressings ran out, and soldiers who received it had measurably better outcomes than those who did not. The mechanism is now fully understood. Honey is naturally low in moisture and high in hydrogen peroxide producing enzymes, which together create an environment hostile to nearly every bacteria that causes wound infection. Medical-grade honey sourced specifically from manuka flowers in New Zealand is now an FDA-cleared wound treatment, stocked in burn units and used on diabetic ulcers that resist antibiotics entirely. The frontier kitchen had the cure. It just took modern medicine 150 years to admit it. Number 8. Maggot therapy. For wounds that would not heal. Understand this plainly. Live fly larvae applied directly to dead and infected tissue. Civil War surgeons noticed something strange on battlefields where wounded men lay for days before treatment. The soldiers whose wounds had been colonized by maggots often healed cleaner than those who received immediate care, because the larvae consumed only dead tissue and left healthy flesh untouched, while secreting compounds that fought infection as they worked. This practice nearly vanished entirely once antibiotics arrived in the 1940s, but antibiotic-resistant infections have forced its return. In 2004, the FDA formally cleared medical maggots as a legitimate treatment device, and they're now used in wound clinics nationwide for diabetic ulcers and pressure sores that refuse to close by any other method. What battlefield surgeons discovered by grim accident, modern wound care has rebuilt into a precise, sterile, FDA-regulated therapy. You might be telling yourself this is squeamish history, interesting but irrelevant. Stay with this list, because the next entry is sitting in a doctor's office near you right now, prescribed under a name you would never connect to its frontier origin. Number 7. Leeches for circulation and swelling. The frontier doctor's black bag nearly always held a jar of them, and not as some grim curiosity. Applied correctly to a swollen limb or a darkening wound. A leech draws blood in a controlled, steady way while injecting a natural anticoagulant that keeps circulation flowing to tissue that would otherwise die from lack of blood flow. Frontier surgeons used this constantly in an era with no other way to manage venous congestion after an injury. The technique survived in pockets of full practice long after mainstream medicine abandoned it as primitive. Then reconstructive surgery created a problem leeches solved better than anything synthetic could match, saving reattached fingers and ears where the veins had not yet healed enough to drain blood properly on their own. The FDA cleared medicinal leeches as a legitimate medical device in 2004, the same year as maggot therapy. Hospitals doing microsurgery keep them on hand today, descendants of the same species your great-grandfather's doctor carried in a jar. Number 6. Foxglove for a failing heart. This one carries a warning attached to its history. Foxglove is genuinely poisonous in the wrong dose, and frontier healers who worked with it did so carefully, using it specifically for dropsy, the old term for the fluid swelling caused by heart failure. An English physician named William Withering spent 10 years in the 1770s documenting exactly how rural healers used it, eventually publishing his findings in 1785 in one of the first true clinical studies of a folk remedy. What Withering identified became digitalis, and its modern refined form, digoxin, remains a standard prescription medication for heart failure and certain arrhythmias today. The frontier healer's careful dose-by-dose knowledge of a dangerous plant became the foundation of an entire category of cardiac medicine. The lesson here is not that every wild plant is safe. It is that the people who learned these plants through direct experience were doing real careful science, centuries before anyone called it that. Number 5. Cinchona bark for fever and chills. Settlers moving through this swampier reaches of the frontier, the Mississippi Delta, the lowland South, faced malaria as a constant threat, and the remedy that worked came from bark imported from South America, ground and steeped into a bitter tonic. Families kept it stocked the way we keep fever reducers today, because a bout of chills and burning fever could turn fatal within days without it. The active compound, quinine, was isolated by French chemists in 1820. And it remains a frontline treatment for malaria in parts of the world today, more than 200 years after frontier families were drinking it as bark tea with no idea what compound inside it was doing the work. The tonic water in your glass still carries a faint echo of quinine, diluted now into a mixer, but tracing directly back to a frontier remedy for a disease most Americans no longer fear. Number 4. Garlic, crushed and applied to wounds. During the worst stretches of frontier life, when proper medicine was days away by horseback, families turned to crushed raw garlic packed against infected cuts and abscesses. They had no concept of bacteria. They simply knew that wounds treated this way were less likely to fester, less likely to turn the deep, dangerous red that meant a limb or a life was at risk. This is not a fringe claim. Russian field medics used crushed garlic so extensively during World War I that it earned the nickname Russian penicillin, deployed in the years before true penicillin existed. Modern laboratory studies have since confirmed that allicin, the compound released when garlic is crushed, has genuine antibacterial properties effective against several drug-resistant strains. Researchers are now studying it specifically as a tool against antibiotic resistance, the very problem that modern medicine's over-reliance on synthetic drugs helped create. Number 3. Elderberry for the first sign of illness. The moment a frontier child showed the first cough or chill of a cold, elderberry syrup came out, dark, thick, and made fresh each fall from berries gathered specifically for this purpose. Every region had its own version, sweetened with honey or sugar depending on what the family could spare. But the core ingredient and the core belief never changed, that this fruit shortened how long sickness lasted. Modern clinical research has taken this seriously enough to test it directly. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, including controlled trials published in respected medical journals, have found that elderberry extract can measurably reduce the duration and severity of cold and flu symptoms when taken at the first sign of illness. It is now sold in nearly every American pharmacy, marketed as a wellness supplement, with almost no acknowledgement that it is simply your great-grandmother's autumn ritual in a different bottle. Number 2. Witch hazel for skin and inflammation. Indigenous communities across the eastern frontier used witch hazel bark long before European settlers arrived, and settlers adopted it quickly once they saw it calm a rash, tighten a bruise, and soothe irritated skin faster than anything else available. Families distilled it themselves when they could, boiling the bark and twigs down into an astringent liquid kept on hand for everything from insect bites to minor burns. Witch hazel never fully disappeared the way some of these remedies did, but it slipped quietly out of serious medicine and into the cosmetics aisle, treated as a mild toner rather than a genuine therapeutic compound. It remains one of the few plant-derived remedies with a standing FDA monograph as an approved over-the-counter astringent. Official recognition that the frontier's instinct about this bark was correct from the start. Number 1. Plantain, the weed growing in your own yard right now. Not the banana relative, the low, broad-leaved lawn weed that homeowners spend money trying to kill. Frontier families considered it one of the most useful plants on the property, crushing the leaves into a poultice for bee stings, splinters, and minor cuts, applying it directly to draw out irritation and speed healing. It grew everywhere, cost nothing, and worked reliably enough that it earned a permanent place in the household medicine kit. Modern phytochemistry has identified exactly why. Plantain leaves contain allantoin and tannins, compounds with documented anti-inflammatory and mild antimicrobial action, the same properties found in several commercial skincare and wound care products today. The Frontier family did not need a laboratory to confirm this. They needed only a backyard and several generations of careful observation, passed from a mother to a daughter who would one day teach her own. These 10 cures did not fail. They were never disproven. They were simply set aside by a century that decided anything without a corporate patent attached to it was not worth taking seriously, and rediscovered one careful study at a time by researchers who eventually had to admit the Frontier had been right all along. The knowledge survived anyway, in worn family recipe boxes and in the memory of people who never stopped trusting what worked. Which one of these is still sitting in your own yard or pantry right now? Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll see you in the next one.